2. Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. It is Pittsburgh week, and that means I get together with all my Pittsburgh drinking buddies and Super Bowl buddies and Combine buddies and owners' meetings buddies. This guy is one of those guys. I don't like most guys from Pittsburgh, but I do put up with this guy. He is the senior Steelers writer for The Athletic in Pittsburgh. I don't know what that makes Bouchette. If you're senior, what does that mean? Super senior, grandfather, I don't know what it is, but they're all getting together at The Athletic, and as I have told Jeff Zrebeck and anyone who will listen, I gave you my $36, Caballi. We welcome Mark Caballi on from Pittsburgh, fresh off a late-night victory over the Cincinnati Bengals. Man, this division's dogs and cats, right? Like, the whole thing's a mess. Cleveland came in here and kicked our ass. I can't even look at myself this week. It's terrible around here, Mark.
Well, if it's terrible around there, what do you think has been in Pittsburgh the last 3 of the past 4 weeks? When you have your franchise Hall of Fame quarterback out for the season, you go 0-3, and it looks like that. Plus you get rid of your first round pick next year. So even if you do tank it and go 3-13, you're not going to get a first round pick. So I think the Steelers right now would probably be happy to trade places with the Baltimore Ravens.
Well, I mean, we can go through all this. Let's start with Minkah Fitzpatrick and sort of the organizational move to deal a first-round draft pick, which hadn't been done in like 50 years, right? Yeah. And they've always been a much more conservative operation in a lot of ways. And I looked at that team on Monday night, and I'm like, man, Roethlisberger, Brown, Bell, all the stuff you had to really account for defensively. And look, the Ravens are a mess. The Ravens are a mess. I don't know what we're going to get at 1 o'clock on Sunday. But I know this. We're not getting Ben and AB on your side either. So for that, I'll get in the car, pay the toll at Breezewood, and, maybe we'll see a good football game this week. I mean, certainly both of these teams with a lot to prove, man.
Yeah, it's a lot different, which is so interesting that only in a couple years, even a year or two, there's been like a 180-degree flip here. All of a sudden, the Steelers have a pretty good defense filled with first-rounders. They have 10 in all, 8 starters, but their offense stinks, and it looks like Baltimore has an offense that can put up some points, but their defense stinks. It's just a kind of interesting quirk in this rivalry over the years has been able to switch like that. But, yeah, they did do some things out of their character this year, and it's mostly under, stress and need to be able to grab somebody like Minkah Fitzpatrick. Not only did they give up a first-round pick, they haven't did that, as you said, since, I believe, 1967. That's how they built this organization, on first-round picks in the draft. So for them to give that up, that was pretty important. But their free safety, Sean Davis, wasn't signed before their self-imposed deadline here, beginning of the season, which means he will leave via free agency last year. Then he gets hurt on top of that. So it's basically a 2-for-1. It's a draft pick, and it's a replacement for him, all in the same fell swoop here. So that's why they pulled the trigger on that. And a couple of days later, they lost both of their 1 and 2 tight ends, so they had to go out and trade a 5th-rounder for Nick Van Nett from Seattle because they didn't have anybody else. So they've made something like, I want to say, 14 trades over the past 25 months. The 14 years before that, I think they've made 13. So they're pulling out all the stops here, just trying to get things back in order. They don't want to do it that way, but they feel that's the only way possible. And what it's going to do is draft a pretty wide open Nestor. So I'm really appreciative of that.
Well, let's start with this. I mean, you and I get together at combines and owners' meetings and off seasons, and you know of my relationship with Mike Tomlin. And clearly, you've been around this a long time. I've been around this. One of the real benefits for the Ravens, and I know Harbaugh almost got pushed off the ship last year, right? Like, in November, there was no chance he was coming back. All the speculation, all that stuff. Pittsburgh's one of those places where nothing ever gets rocked with Colbert and the Rooney family and Tomlin. And maybe there is something to trading a first-round draft pick that's not desperate. But that's the type of stuff the Ravens always could sort of buy green bananas, right? Because there's longevity here. There's a belief in the system. There's a belief in the way. DeCosta waited 10 years for the gig. He's got the gig. Harbaugh's still here. Now we put Billick in the Ring of Honor last week. So we're very stable. And when you start getting to be like, well, we can't go 4-12 this year, or we're not going to be here next year, That's more the way they behave in Cleveland and Tampa and a bunch of other places. We could, maybe Cincinnati. Now the Marvin's gone. Who knows, right? But it was always that way before. But stability in that leads to we don't need the deal for Minkah Fitzpatrick because we're not winning the Super Bowl this year. You know what I mean? Like, there's a part of that, and it's okay, and I'm going to keep my job if we don't win the Super Bowl this year. Not a lot of that goes on in sports anywhere, but in Pittsburgh and Baltimore, there's been that. I sense a little like they might go 3-13 this year. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how bad the Steelers are, right? And I don't know what that means for everyone there. But I know it doesn't mean anything good if you go 3-13 and your 5th overall pick winds up going to, the Dolphins. You know what I mean?
Yeah, another thing is Tomlin usually is extended 2 years every 2 years, and that was up this year. And they only gave him a 1-year extension with an option for the second year. And Colbert, on his own, his own saying, his own doing, did not want to be extended and want to go from year to year. But I don't think either one of those two are making moves out of desperation that their job might be in jeopardy. I mean, that'd be a pretty crappy thing to do, to get rid of a coach after 12, 13 years because you lose your quarterback to an elbow injury. Your running back leaves because he wants $20 million a year, and your wide receiver goes absolutely crazy. And not to mention, you lose your best defensive player to a tragic injury a couple months even before that. So I don't think that's the case.
It has been a crazy period. I mean, like if you had been in a bubble for 3 years and came back from the moon and said, "What's happened here?" Tragedy really in Pittsburgh, and then on top of that, just a bunch of wacky stuff for you to have to cover with the most talented guys. Not to mention, go back to Roethlisberger and what happened in Georgia with him, right? So, there's been a lot of drama there that somehow y'all win 12 or 13 games every year through it all, right?
Yeah, there's no drama this year. I tell you that locker room is nice as can be, and they don't miss Antonio Brown at all from, I would like to say, Monday through Saturday. But they sure as heck miss him on Sunday. And that was the issue early on. And you see that now, and with Roethlisberger out, and even Antonio Brown gone and Bell gone, they just don't have those superstar athletes anymore that can go out there and just make, nothing out of something, or make something out of nothing.
I know, we're with it. When the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor, I'm with you.
Like that. Right. I got that 0.0.
Well, it was 0.0, and then the Bengals showed up, right? I mean, we beat the snot out of the Dolphins. I learned nothing from the Steelers on Monday other than the Bengals really stink, and we play them next week, and you better not lose to them, right?
Offensive line is by far the worst offensive line I've seen in 20 years. The Bengals are just awful. They got some talent, but that offensive line is just miserable. So I think we can pretty much write those guys off. Right from now, it's basically a 3-team race right now. But back to the Steelers, I don't think anybody knows how good they are. I mean, Mason Rudolph threw 2 passes, 2 or 3 over 10 yards. I think in 10 quarters, he's thrown 10 passes further than 10 yards down the field, and they're just treating him with kid gloves right now. Don't want him to lose the game. Don't want to ruin his confidence. And when you don't have playmakers around that, it's tough to move the ball against teams other than Cincinnati. And I don't know. You're right. I've seen this team for a while, and I have no idea what to expect out of this offense on Sunday. I don't truly believe it was as good as it showed on Monday night because the Bengals stink so bad. But I guess we'll see. They're going to have to find different ways to be able to move the ball. And right now, it's not by trusting the quarterback to let him throw, which is crazy to me because it's all he did in college. 100 touchdowns in college. You threw the ball 2,000 times. He had long, deep touchdown pass after touchdown pass. He was a first-round grade, and they're afraid to let the guy throw the ball more than a yard. It's crazy.
Well, Lamar Jackson threw the hell out of the football in Louisville, too, although he was considered to be a running quarterback. And the people that saw him in Louisville, the people that scouted, are not all that shocked that he has made some of these incredible throws and that he's been resourceful in all sorts of weird ways. Mark Gabali joining us here. He is a senior Steelers writer for The Athletic in Pittsburgh. He's also the president of the PFWA of Pittsburgh, which makes him close friends with Chris Pica around here. Now, in Baltimore, the Baltimore-Pittsburgh thing, 1 o'clock on Sunday. Are we going to be awake for this one, man? Like, I mean, daylight, 1 o'clock football at the Confluence. The Steelers and the Ravens, it's almost an insult, isn't it?
You know what? Harbaugh talked to us media folk on Wednesday, and he had a classic line because Tomlin said something earlier in the week about they're trying to, take snaps away from Mason Rudolph. That's why they ran some of the Wildcat. They want to make it from 7 to 50. Sort of like take the ball out of his hands. Harbaugh said, "Yeah, we want to do the same thing. So this game might be over in 20 minutes." I'm like, I'm all up for that.
Well, the Ravens had such success last year, and I don't know if you're shocked by how well they played at the end. I think we're all sort of shocked by a running quarterback running into linebackers. It looked like bumper cars last year. This year, it's normalized to some degree, and it looks more like a college offense that's not a Navy offense, right? That looks spread out, creating mismatches, creating short passes, creating running lanes that Mark Ingram sees. He's averaging 6 yards. So all that's wonderful. The problem is when the defense gets on the field, there have been pastures, available, and communication problems and locker room problems, if you believe what was written, over the weekend with Earl Thomas and Brandon Williams. And there's been injuries on the backside. Jimmy Smith isn't on the field. Tavon Young's not coming on the field. Marlon Humphrey's been gimpy at various points. There's no C.J. Mosley. There's no Suggs. It's weird, but the defense has been bad enough to really hurt the offense because last year when they're pumping 3 and out and getting the ball back and you're going on 12-play drives, I'm with you, dude. There's 3 minutes left to go in the game and it's 3:30 and you're like, whoa, let's get on the bus, get out of here, because it is a different style of football. It's a different way you want to play football. And when it doesn't go well, when the defensive part doesn't do its part, it's really made for not a good couple of weeks around here.
Yeah, it's hard to even blame the Ravens. I mean, you're not going to pay Mosley that type of money to stick around, right? I mean, you're not going to pay Suggs any type of money to stay around at age, what is he, 50? Or at least
you know what, though? We would say that you're not going to pay Bell and that Maniac Brown, and then all of a sudden you look up and you're like, well, we're both trying to figure out how we're going to get 8 wins this year, right?
Yeah, but what they tried to pay Le'Veon, they would if he would have taken the money that they offered him, it was more than he would have gotten in New York. I mean, not to mention the $14 million he gave up last year from not playing. So he was he got some a little bit of bad advice. But I'll tell you what about Tomlin, and I don't know how sold he is on. I'm not saying Lamar Jackson's ability, but the type of scheme and how they run. He was never a big fan of the read option quarterbacks, even back in the day. 3, 4, 5 years ago when Robert Griffin was on, I remember him once saying, "Yeah, let's wait a year and wait till the defensive coordinators type of catch up to these guys." So I don't know if he believes long term in this offense being able to work. But I'm sure Lamar Jackson, as he gets older, will probably change his style to you've seen it everywhere. You've seen guys like Michael Vick change his style.
Hey, man, you know what? I've seen it in the first 4 weeks.
Style.
I mean, I saw it last week, bro. He used to lean in, right? He would work toward the sidelines and look for a gap to shoot a gap and make a play knowing he's going to get tackled, right? He has been much more, I'm going to find the sideline the last month than he was the last month of last year. That's for sure.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that, right? Preserve.
Live another day. I mean, Hollywood Brown's about as big as me, right? And you're a bigger guy.
The combine. I stood right next to him at the combine, and I said, obviously, because Antonio Brown's his relative or said relative or whatever it is, and I remember saying, that is the smallest human I've ever seen put a football helmet on right there. Now, Devin Bush, Steelers' first-round pick, might not be much bigger, but that guy is small.
Well, and getting out of bounds is big for him. If he can go 3-4 weeks without getting tackled at all, I sort of like that. Mark Abali's here. He's up in Pittsburgh. On the Antonio Brown thing, you've told me how you feel about Tomlin. And you feel like they're safe and that's cool. And we'll get to Ben in a minute. We'll get to Connor and the things on the field. But Antonio Brown, in your era, you've done this for 2 decades. I asked Bouchette this, any of the veteran people, who can give a legitimate answer. I mean, you feel like the craziness of him. You feel like the craziness of Le'Veon Bell, who lost, $20 million or whatever he'll never get back. Same thing with, Brown will never get his career back. And then I guess the president's like, hold my beer. Let me call the Russians, right? Like, as to the wackiness of decision-making, right? But you have been witness to two pretty good-sized career suicides simultaneously that has not rocked Mike Tomlin's boat. He's got his job. He's got his salary, right? Has not rocked Ben Roethlisberger. He's going to cast. He'll come back and play. You know, the only ones these guys have really heard of themselves, the fans, their teammates, it has been how to F up your career, and you've been there chronicling it. It's fascinating. I mean, I watched Albert Bell here, right, you know, and I've seen some wacky stuff, but that's right up there. I mean, what you guys have witnessed.
Yeah, the craziest thing about it is he's probably the best receiver I ever saw play. The guy was that talented. If it's, you know, just sideline catches, big plays, coming up in big spots, you knew when there was a big spot in the game that I knew, they knew, Steelers knew Antonio Brown was going to make a play, and he did. And he did that for 6 straight years. So there was probably nobody I've ever seen as good as him. But you know what? He not only, I don't know if I agree or disagree with you, I think he did hurt the Steelers organization something fierce by doing what he did. If he would have just acted like a human being, like I said, I always say last year, this team would probably be in a totally different stratosphere of being good or, you know, a little bit better than what they are right now. So I think he took them down. I think he took the Raiders down, and he was close to probably taking the Patriots down if he did it again.
Dude, when the stories are told on the 30 for 30, 4 years from now, when they write when the 30 for 30 people come looking for you and you sit and tell the story, like seriously, man, there is going to be a story told about this and I don't know how it's going to end, and I think he's troubled beyond what you and I can understand in some way, but it's unbelievable because, I can only imagine how much ass-kissing Tomlin and how much all of everybody around there put up with in order to sort of want to see him make a play in the fourth quarter because it makes everybody's life better, literally, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of people talking about Tomlin should get some kind of a award for being able to get 8-9 years out of the guy. I think that happened because Tomlin looked the other way on some things that he probably shouldn't have looked the other way that made it get to this point. He was always a strange guy, but he was never this strange. It was last maybe OTAs is when you looked at him and were like, who in the world is this guy right now? He's acting absolutely crazy. And the problem with Antonio Brown is he's the biggest narcissist I've ever ever saw. And what I mean by that is nobody exists except him. Nothing matters except him, and that goes across the board of every walk of life. And I believe with anywhere from the organization, teammates to everything, it's all about him. And when somebody tried to maybe not make it about him, he can't handle it. But giving up $30 million, oh my goodness! I mean, the guy. I mean, there was a running joke here in Pittsburgh, and this will go years and years and years now, that we would say, how many years after he retires will Antonio be broke? It was just like, ha, funny, he spends a lot of money. Now you have to consider that as a possibility. How many years until he goes broke? Because you know why? He said last year, this is not something different. When he showed up in his helicopter, he goes, this is my lifestyle. And I think he truly believed that. And if it's his lifestyle, why is he giving up $30 million? It's just crazy.
Mark Cavalli joining us here, senior Steelers writer for The Athletic in Pittsburgh. We will be together, eat Mr. Rooney's cookies in a roast on Sunday at 1 o'clock up at the Confluence. Watch Connor run around the other night and watch the ankle turn. And, I went right to Twitter, and I'm like, wow, that would change Sunday's game, especially with how the Ravens have played the run and the way the Steelers probably want to play this football game. The offensive line's very much intact, right? That is the strength of the team, especially now with the skill positions being down and Roethlisberger being out, and the defense trying to bring it together a little bit. This would bode well that if Connor's well and they can run the football a little bit, that's how they're going to win this football game Sunday.
And they haven't been able to run the ball, even though that offensive line's been together for the better part of the past 4 years. They're all veteran type of guys except the right tackle, Matt Filer. They haven't been getting very much movement at all on the defensive front, and it's caused a lot of issues. Connor, they were able to run the ball probably better than what the numbers showed last week because I believe it was only 70, 80 yards between Connor and Samuels, but a lot of those were also considered passes because he flipped the ball an inch in front of him. It got a little bit better last week, but the old grinding, running it between the tackles, pounding and open up big holes just hasn't been there this year for Connor. I know he missed practice on Wednesday. He should be okay. But the insertion of Jalen Samuels now into the offense, he didn't play a snap against the 49ers. And it's absolutely crazy because the guy is very versatile. He touched the ball, as you saw Monday night, a ton. So to be able to use him in different situations, I don't think we'll see the wildcat, so to speak, to help the run game, but I think we'll see some of these jet sweeps and some of the things like this just to try to get some speed to the outside. But their offensive line is at that brink of being good and old. I mean, they got 4 guys at 30 and 1 guy at 27, a couple guys at 32, 31. So they're at that point where you're saying, are they just playing bad right now, or are they just over the hill and it's starting to show? And that's to be determined right now. But that offensive line, even though it should be the strength, has not been the strength so far.
In the case of the quarterback and where you are with him, and obviously this was not an ideal situation, you would say he's not ready for this, right? Like rushed into this, and they're trying to sort of cobble it together with bubble gum and paper clips and whatever. How do you feel about? I mean, how did he throw the ball in the backfields in Latrobe? How does he look in the black and gold game? How did he look in August? Because certainly, he's going to be the guy, right? I mean, there's nobody over his shoulder. He's going to get a real season to play this. And whether the skill position guys and Juju Smith-Schuster and whether Moncrief can hold on to the football or not, that's going to be whether it makes him or not, right? He'll be the 3-13 quarterback. That'll stick to him if this thing doesn't go well.
Yeah, I mean, they really don't have any other options since they traded Josh Dobbs to Jacksonville. They got Devlin Hodges, who played at Samford and was a tryout this year. They signed Paxton Lynch. Well, we all need to know about that. And they brought some guy in on Wednesday from South Dakota State just to pretend like he's Lamar Jackson. They just signed him, probably just for a week. I don't even know what his name is. So, I mean, there's not much options behind Mason Rudolph. He has the arm talent, but we just saw in training camp a lot. He wasn't making the quick decisions. It was always hold, throw a late, get picked type of thing. They haven't allowed that to happen in the these 10 quarters he's played because there's very few reads. It's like, let's get rid of the ball quick in the flat. There's basically no reads at all. There might be a run-pass option to the effect of he comes to the line with 2 plays and he counts the people in the box and he either calls a run or a pass. But they're not allowing him to show what he can do right now, and it doesn't help that, they got a rookie wide receiver in Deontay Johnson. They got Juju, who is getting all of the double teams and triple teams, and they have a third guy, James Washington, who you would think would be pretty good because he spent 3 years with Mason Rudolph and catching, 40 touchdowns at Oklahoma State, has been non-existent. Now Moncrief drops the ball so much, he might getting cut. He hasn't played since week 2, and they just don't have any playmakers. Their tight end, Vance McDonald, has a hurt shoulder. They just don't have anybody to help him out. So until they can get those guys up to speed and ready to, actually produce, they have to create situations like they did Monday night, wildcat, quick throws, jet sweeps, just all type of stuff. The first hide Rudolph's lack of he did not he was a third-string quarterback last year. Third-string quarterbacks in his rookie year. You know what that means? He got almost 0 reps in training, after the season started. He had to go, they had virtual reality. So they would tape the game. He would go up into the coach's room after the practice, and put a virtual reality mask on and pretend like he's taking reps. And now all of a sudden, week 2, he's a starting quarterback. So I don't think they expected him to be needed this quickly, and I think that's why his developments have been a little bit slow, because he hasn't really played that much at all. Last year was a lost year. He had a baseball cap on all year.
Did you agree with the Minkah Fitzpatrick deal and, where the Steelers are and what they got in a guy who's a year out of this thing? I mean, he might be the best player on their team, right?
Yeah, I think it's a good deal. Even if it is a tough, first of all, the Steelers aren't going to go 3-13. They always find a way to go 7-9, 8-8, and they would screw it up anyways. But that's beside the point. Fitzpatrick's on his second year of deal. Basically, they got 4 more years of control at a very reasonable price at a position that they were going to go out and either draft next year or have to do free agency next year. And if you do free agency next year, you got $14-15 million wrapped up in a guy that with this type of talent. Then they can't sign a guy like T.J. Watt or Juju or James Conner, who are all up next year as well. So, plus the guy's a pretty doggone good player who could just throw it in there the first day. So I don't think that's a bad trade at all. It's not like he's a rent-a-player and gone. I mean, Nick Van Nett is the tight end.
It's also not he was not somebody else's mistake either. It's just
he played well.
Their philosophy there. The Dolphins thing. Mark, I don't know what to say about this league. I stayed in the hotel. We played down there week 1, and I got an elevator with 2 guys, one with an orange jersey, one with an aquamarine. One had a Tunzel jersey, the other one had a Fitzpatrick jersey on. And they're both, you know what I mean? They're both gone. And it's disgraceful, really. I mean, the tanking thing. I sit here on the baseball side on the tanking thing, but this is part of the tanking thing, is that they'll dominate the draft next April, right?
Yeah, well, look what Cleveland did. They had a ton of draft picks forever, and they kept picking Brandon Wheaton and Johnny Manziel. You can have all the picks in the world, but you better make them good. And that hasn't been, just because you've got 4 first-round picks, each year in the next 3 years or whatever it is, doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to pick the right people. Cleveland picked Justin Gilbert one time, like 4th overall. I mean, you have to make the picks here, the last, and that's what you have to count on. And, the only thing that I don't really like about their whole situation is that there's some guys saying, and even Fitzpatrick included, he didn't really want to talk about saying, hey, I want Trey to get me out of here because I didn't want to play in the box. I mean, come on, man. What are you doing here? And if something doesn't go your way, you just want out. What happens if the Steelers want to play you in a box and you just want to go? I just don't like how the NFL seems to be trending toward that, and that's I think the Antonio Brown effect in a way, where he can dictate his way out of town. And Antonio Brown, who's back to him real quick, is friends with a lot of NBA guys, and he thinks he can be an NBA type of talent that can dictate his way out of anywhere. I just hope that league doesn't go to that point where everybody's, a team that's maybe Kyler Murray next week. Hey, I don't want to play in Arizona anymore.
It all started with that SOB Elway in '83 and that Manning family that wanted no part of San Diego, because none of us want to go to San Diego, right, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, they were a terrible organization, but turned out to work out for them just about everywhere. So I'm guessing you're still a little upset about the Baltimore Colts.
No, I'm over that, man. We got 2 rings here. We've had parades. I'm good.
They're not even your team anymore. I mean, you guys disassociated with the Colts. You're your own entity. You're not even the Browns anymore, right?
You know what I mean? We've had a beautiful second marriage here that's lasted 24 years. We're bringing new players, new teams, same coaches, similar uniforms. I don't know what pajamas we're wearing. As long as you guys aren't wearing those Jailbird, Three Stooges, striper-looking things. I don't know what the hell
I don't even know if they're wearing those this year. No, they retired those.
They retired those, thank God.
Yeah,
I hope they buried them.
Those were awful. You couldn't see the numbers because they're so small. Well, I mean, what about the AFC North? That's 2 stories. Yeah, I know this isn't new or topical, but Baltimore and Cleveland losing franchise is just crazy to me.
Well, I mean, we lost to the Browns the other day, so I can't get over that. I'm still trying to figure that all out. Hey, I will see you for Mr. Rooney's roast on Sunday. Looking forward to watching some football up there at the Confluence, and always appreciate you coming on, Mark. Thanks, man.
Yeah. All right, we'll have some runny eggs up there for you.
Oh, man, make them a little – no, come on, man. Cook them a little more for me, all right? Mark Kaboly joining us here from The Athletic. You can find him out at Mark Kaboly. That's Kaboly. And The Athletic in Pittsburgh, where I am a proud subscriber. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. You can find us out in the buy at Toyota.com. Audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. I am Nestor. It's Pittsburgh week. Stay tuned. Luke's and Owings Mills. We're WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.